There are several market structures that we study at the principles level of microeconomics. And throughout the majority of the first half of this course, we've implicitly been studying the perfect competition market structure, or markets that are perfectly competitive. And if I were to list out all the different market structures on a straight line, and I'm just going to call this a line that represents the different market structures in economics, perfect competition would be on a very, very far end of this line, where it represents a very extreme case of a market structure. And all the other market structures that we're gonna look at in this course, from monopoly, oligopoly to monopolistic competition, these are just known as market structures that are imperfectly competitive, as opposed to the case where on the one end it's perfectly competitive. So what does it mean for a market to be perfectly competitive? Well, in order for a market to be perfectly competitive, a market must have these characteristics, or right here I just list them as assumptions. So the first characteristic: all firms and consumers in a perfectly competitive market are small and they cannot influence the market price. Another word for this is, because all consumers and producers are so small, they have no market power. And if they don't have any market power, they don't have any power to influence the market price. Everybody in the marketplace is what's known as a price taker. Suppose there's a market price determined by supply and demand, the typical market supply and market demand curves. The intersection of those gives us the market equilibrium, price, and quantity. So every producer, every purchaser looks at the market price and takes it as given, because they can't influence the market price. They can't offer if you are a producer, you can't offer a price above the market price, because that will lead to you having no customers, which is pretty obvious. If the market price is $10 and you go ahead and try to sell your good for $11, why would anybody buy the good for $11 from you? Because there are so many other producers, so many other companies selling the same good at $10. So you're going to get no customers if you charge a price above the prevailing market price. Pretty obvious, obvious scenario and result. What's less obvious is the case where, why won't any firm charge below the market price? In the example that I just gave, the market price was $10. Why won't any firm charge $9? Because if they charge $9, people ultimately care about the price. If the price is $1 lower than the market price, then a lot of customers will be coming to you if you are undercutting the market price by $1. However, the assumption, or the characteristic / assumption, that all firms are small leads to so firms are too small. Firms are too small to actually benefit from all this influx of customers, because they don't have the capacity to actually satisfy all the customers. They can only produce what they were producing at the beginning when they were charging $10. They're not actually able to supply more product to the influx of customers. So the firms are too small to actually benefit from increase in customers. And if they're selling the same amount to the same customers, but now for $1 less, then they're actually losing money. They're losing money compared to the case before, where they could have sold their product for $10 instead of $9. So this leads to no incentive no incentive for firms to actually undercut because of this characteristic that all firms are very small in a perfectly competitive marketplace. So hence everybody is a price taker. And the argument goes the same if for consumers. Consumers are so small that they're not able to have the power to haggle and decrease price. Another characteristic of perfectly competitive markets is the product that we are talking about, the product in the perfectly competitive market is a standardized product. Another word for that is the product is homogenized. For instance, if we are talking about the market for cell phones, then there's no different brands of cell phones. There's no iPhone, there's no Samsung, there's no Google Pixel. There's only one product that company A, B, C, D, E all make. They make what's known as a cell phone. So there's no competing with other firms, other companies by quality, by brand, by functionality. Everybody, it's plain and simple. Everybody produces the same product. Everybody literally produces the same product with the same technology. So it's a very bare bones scenario, and to an extent, it's not very realistic because there's not many industries, many products that actually meet this definition. However, understanding this bare bones and extreme scenario still gives us economic intuition to help us make decisions. So that's why we're studying the perfectly competitive market structure, even though it's very extreme. The fourth characteristic in this market structure is the characteristic that it's free for any firm to enter the industry or exit the industry. Another name for this is no barriers to entry in the long run. So no barriers to entry / exit. If an industry is extremely profitable, then this is a signal. It's a signal to other entrepreneurs, people who have money to invest, to open up a company and compete in this industry and get a piece of this profit pie that the incumbent firms are sharing at the moment. So when an industry has positive profits, this signals to everybody else that, hey, there's money to be made in this industry, and because people and companies are greedy, they want more money, they want money in general, then they have an incentive to enter the industry and eat away at the profits. On the other side, if an industry is losing money, it's experiencing or earning negative profits, then there are going to be companies that are going to go out of business, go bankrupt, wrap up shop, and close up and leave the industry. And the assumption that the companies are free to enter and exit ensure that in the long run, profits in the long run in a perfectly competitive market are zero, at least for the last firm that enters or exits the industry, what economists call the marginal firm that enters or exits the industry. And the fifth characteristic, consumers and producers have perfect information. So the producers, consumers know how many firms are out there, know how many consumers are out there, and they know everything about the product. There's no imperfect information or asymmetric information. One side of the market doesn't have more information than the other. And again, granted, this is a very strong assumption, but it's an assumption that is required. And finally, firms, the minimum efficient scale, MES, of each firm is very small compared to the size of the market. And examples of markets for that are kind of resemble a perfectly competitive market. The best example that I can think of is the market for wheat. Wheat is very standardized, and there are many producers of wheat, many consumers of wheat, and the industry as a whole is very competitive, and the price is reflected in that. So a very boring example, but wheat is oftentimes you'll see in the textbooks one of the better examples of a perfectly competitive market. And how does the demand curve look like for a firm in a very small firm, remember, in a perfectly competitive market? So recall firms are small and consumers are small. So the everybody is what's known as a price taker, which means if the price is, let's say, $10, the firms have to take this price or leave and not sell at this price. And another way of looking at this is we can view a firm's demand curve as a just a horizontal demand curve. So this is the demand for an individual firm in the perfectly competitive market structure. And if the price, if the firm wants to sell at a higher price, then they're completely off their consumers' demand curve, because everybody's a price taker, and why would anybody buy from this firm if their price is higher? Nobody's going to buy, so they're completely off the demand curve. And likewise, equivalently, if the price is of the firm is lower than the $10 market price, then they're completely off the demand curve. There's zero quantity demanded. So that means whatever quantity the firm can sell is on this horizontal demand curve.